You have reached 6 calls. If you want to tell us your story, please leave a message after the beep.
We're all tired, all these associations, we're all tired of speaking to this person and this manager and that politician and this doctor and that. We're all really tired, but we have to carry on. Because unfortunately, it is our lives. It affects us 24 hours a day. Some to more degrees than others, but it affects my life. This is who I am. I'm not hiding, I'm not pretending, I'm not doing anything else. This is who I am. I've been very lucky because I've worked, now I'm retired, but I've worked 38 years of my life. I've worked, I'm married, I've got children, I've got grandchildren, 7 grandchildren. So I've been part of society. But what people like myself feel is that we are not part, society does not make us part of it. We are there. We try to grab onto society in our own different ways. But society sometimes try to leave us behind because they've got other issues, they've got other priorities. They've got, no, I've got £10,000 and I'm going to spend it here, I can't spend it there. So many years ago I had an accident and they couldn't find a chair for me, and they managed to find a chair. Well, for about 20 years, wheelchairs had to be donated or purchased by the disabled person or donated by charities. St. John's comes to mind. Everybody used to go to St. John's, which they donated wheelchairs. And the group that I was in, we lobbied long and hard to say, this is wrong. This is completely wrong.
Deafness has never been given the priority and the support it merited. We live in an orderly society. By that I mean that they expect people to talk and hear, and over-reliance on telephones, over-reliance on spoken word. And unfortunately, the pandemic brought to light how our society is not really caters for people with hearing loss and profound deafness.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this afternoon's press conference from number 6 Convent Place. I'm hosting this afternoon's press conference with the Director of Public Health, Dr. Batty.
What was very disheartening was the fact that not even in a pandemic health crisis situation was there any adequate reasonable adjustments done on TV, because the government COVID-19 pandemic press conferences, they weren't subtitled for the deaf community who rely on British Sign Language. No interpreter was hired, and we feel that in the day and age of technology making things easy, technology was not a reason for not being readily available. And we found that profoundly deaf and hard of hearing people, they felt isolated, forgotten, discriminated, not important, for them not to get the information like the rest of us in real time. They always had to wait 24 hours, or when it was the online content or the actual script provided by government made available. And even the script only covered whatever the Chief Minister would say, not whatever the GHA would say, which is the important part of the GHA side of things. So if people felt then confused with the information and scared, the hearing loss community was that added extra, feeling anxious and and uncared for.
Now we'll allow the Director of Public Health, Dr. Sohail Bhatti, to give you his own introduction and views in respect of our Unlock the Rock document before we take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope.
And it's so frustrating. It's heartbreaking. I'm still having the same issues. I still can't go into certain places. I still find people parking on pavements and blocking drop curbs and parking in disabled bays. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You know, I mean, the issues are still there, and it's heartbreaking. It's really, really bad. And I'm glad that there are a lot of young people now in different associations that are bringing up all these issues, raising awareness. And there's a long way to go. I'm afraid that there's still a long way to go.
In my view, is that Gibraltar is not doing enough. The world has caught up. You see British Sign Language, well, you see signing because depending the country, they've got their own version of sign language, you know. So the French, the Spanish, the British use their own sign language. The British government actually has been sued for their press releases not to have had a signer, but you see the other governments, like the Scottish and the Welsh, they do use a signer, and the Irish as well. And subtitles are readily available in all channels. So it's not something about the world, it's about Gibraltar not caught up with the day and age in giving support for the deaf community.
Go.
The specialist there said, look, once the child will hit puberty, it can go both ways. She can either get better, and that's it, she will only have the tinnitus, or she can get worse. Faith hit puberty. What was the word of the day at home? What? Don't say what, excuse me. Excuse me? The TV every time was louder and louder and louder. I felt like I was living with a very deaf person at home. The TV was always so loud. And we were in France, in a villa, on holiday. And the whole facade of the villa was a huge ivy. It was beautiful, but there was all sorts of bees in there, every color, every size. And it would get very noisy, the buzzing all the time, the buzzing. And we were outside on the garden, which was huge, and we were talking about the buzzing of the bees, and my daughter turned around and said, "What buzzing?" She was 14 by this stage. I said, "Faith, you can't hear the buzzing." "No." I said, "Start walking towards the house and tell me when you can hear the buzz." So she started walking and walking and walking. And I said to my husband, "Where's she going?" She was about 1.5 meters away from the wall. She said, "Now I'm beginning to hear the bees." And I thought, this is not on. We can't carry on like this. But we can't be taking her to the UK. She was year 9 already. She was starting her GCSE course. We couldn't afford for her to miss so much school coming and going because of the lack of a pediatric audiologist in Gibraltar. We couldn't afford that. So we made the decision to take her private, where she'd always gone, who's a lovely lady. She's wonderful. She's been so wonderful with her. And she got her hearing aids.
When I was younger, people used to actually people are like, oh, they talk behind my back. They would actually stand behind me and talk about me because I couldn't hear them. And this actually continued. And when I got my hearing aids, I didn't make a big fuss about it. And I was like, oh, I'm getting hearing aids. So people would actually stand behind me and talk about me. And I would kind of turn around and be like, "In serio, guys, like, you actually do that?" Like, I used to joke about it, but damn, like, get out.
You wouldn't tell that my daughter's partially deaf. If she can't understand you, she'll read your lips, and she's done it forever. She uses her sight a lot because to cross the road, she can hear a car coming, but she can't hear a truck. So she uses her eyes a lot. She's resilient. Nothing's ever stopped her. Not her disability, not, She wanted to do music. I said, well, if that's what you want to do, go ahead. She passed her music GCSE. She's passed all of her GCSEs. She's moving on to do A-level.
The hearing loss is like, it's a struggle sometimes, but I've grown up with it, so it's kind of like, it's always there, and it's always going to be there. So, yeah, I think like at first I used to think, I'm not going to be able to do anything because I can't hear, because this, because that. Like, it was basic things like lifeguarding. I didn't know if I was going to get the job to be a lifeguard because I wasn't going to be able to hear. Obviously I got selected, and here I am, and I've done rescues, and I've done this, and I've done that, and I help anywhere now, and I do first aid, and I do, like, I'm useful. So that was things like that. It's a bit of a shock, but like I want to study psychology and criminology, and psychology in like hospitals and stuff. And I wanna go into that. Like, that's always interested me, child psychology, things like that. And I don't think like there should be any reason why that stops me.
We've always tried to look for the silver lining, when she used to cry because I'm different, Faith, you're not that different. How many children are more different than you? And they still get on with it. And it's okay to be different. There's nothing wrong with being different, I'm different, I don't want to be different, I want to be normal. You're normal. We've always tried to look for the silver lining because, one, I couldn't wrap her in bubble wrap because you won't get anywhere with pity. And two, she needed to know what, in the future, nobody is gonna make excuses for you. I couldn't make excuses for her, no matter how little she was. I used to break my heart, and I've cried over this so much, but I couldn't make excuses for her. It was, I as your mother feel sorry for you. I wish it was me and not you. But now wipe your tears, straighten your crown, and move on. You have to find other ways. You cannot just sit in a corner and feel sorry for yourself.
When the masks came into play, it was so hectic. Between like the hearing aid, which is already, it's odd because listening through a hearing aid and then taking it off and listening normally, it's very odd. So between that, maybe the noises of a classroom if it's the aircon, the people talking, this and that, and the masks, it was just terrible. My chemistry teacher, actually, obviously I spoke to him, he was a male as well, so I was like, sir, we have an issue, I cannot understand what you're saying. It's getting to a point, and until I can't lip read. There were times in the year I wouldn't understand a teacher and I would just see what they're saying, more or less I'd get the gist of it. But he actually went off and he changed his mask and all. He got one with plastic so I could see through. So like he was speaking and I could read what he was saying, and which honestly, and that was he was the only teacher that actually did it. Like other teachers would kind of just take off the mask or come and like help me. But sometimes when that happens, the teacher comes and they like explain it to you, you feel a bit more, come on, like you feel not excluded because you're not excluded, but it feels like you're drawing more attention to yourself because they've stopped the whole class to explain to you what they've just said. But I liked how he had just done it so easily. He was like, Minna, if you need anything, you let me know. But it made me feel more a part of the class because he hadn't drastically just stopped the class to tell me. No, I felt more included because he had changed the mask just for me. And it genuinely, because then I would finish, like the class would finish and he'd take off the mask and change it to a normal one. So it would be like, that was for me, and that was something that they did because I needed it and I didn't feel left out. Like that moment, it made me quite happy, to be fair.
The school was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. They've absolutely bent over backwards for her. And I cannot be any more grateful, you know. Yes, she has a disability. Yes, we've cried so much. Yes, it's been very, very, very difficult. But within all of that, I've got to be grateful, you know, that the people around me and the people who knew and the people who were able to help really, really, really helped. I wasn't going to let her fail because of her partial deafness. I wanted her to succeed with it. Embrace it, it's there, you can't do anything about it, it's there. You've got two choices, there's always a choice. Either you sit in a corner and cry, or get up, wipe your tears and move on. It's up to you.
I mean, I used to be very sensitive and like I was always like, oh, but this happened. Like now it's kind of like battle because it's always the same thing. You can't tell me a deaf joke or a deaf insult that I have not heard before. And like some people, they get uncomfortable. You're like, oh, I have hearing impairment or I have hearing loss. And they're like, oh, they get a bit uncomfortable. Like me and my best friend, we joke about it. He literally makes fun of me. It's like, Faith, shut up, you don't hear me anyway. I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. Like, I'd rather you joke with me than be uncomfortable. And like when I was younger, you wouldn't have been able to joke with me, I would have cried. But now it's like, good, joke with me because you're not uncomfortable about it, and neither am I. Like, it's something I've grown, you have to grow to live with it. I get maybe at such a young age as well, it's a bit more of a shock because you don't want to be different. No, the chico, you don't want to be different because they'll make fun of you for everything. But now it's like, oh no, okay, que vamos a hacer? This is what I have, this is what I am, and if you don't like it, go away and tell you, like, I don't have time for you.
I wasn't born disabled. I got polio when I was 8 years old. And I can't remember many things about it, but I do remember a few snippets. I remember I used to live in Morales Ramp and I used to play down at the football pitch. And I remember playing football and all of a sudden I was feeling really bad, awful, really sick. So I staggered and stumbled all the way up to my house, many steps up to my house. And the next thing I remember was waking up in hospital, I don't know how long after that particular day. And I was paralyzed from the neck down. It was, obviously I was 8 years old, so kids are very resilient. So I suppose that I survived something which was very horrible at the time. Polio is a killer disease, to be honest. And slowly my kidneys started functioning, my lungs started functioning, my arms came back, my waist, and it settled on my lower limbs. And I remember traveling to the UK, to Stoke Mandeville actually, on 2 occasions, soon after or shortly after when I got this, and then when I was 10 years old. And I suppose that's where I actually learned to be a disabled person. I was a young kid surrounded by loads and loads of disabled persons. I never saw any disabled persons in Gibraltar before that. So they taught me how to fall, how to roll, how to do many things. And that's my first experience and recollection of actually being disabled. When I was growing up, I couldn't relate to any disability group out there, none of them. At the time, today the Disability Society is called, at the time it was called the Handicap Society, and I couldn't, there was nothing there. They were going down another particular avenue, and it was difficult to relate to that, to the point where when I started thinking about this, I met other disabled people that had of similar ideas as me, and we created a disability awareness group, which we think made an impact and changed a lot of things in Gibraltar at the time. We're talking about probably 30 years ago. But the access scale you see today that everybody takes for granted, that was due to us lobbying and trying to reason with politicians at the time, you know, and putting up our flag and saying, hey, this is who we are and you need to cater for us. We don't want anything special. All we want is a right to be here and a right to be able to go into a shop, go into a restaurant, go in education, a right to jobs, and so on and so on. And I think that started the movement, and it started some awareness, which was the biggest thing that was needed in Gibraltar. And unfortunately, 30 years on, still have the same issues.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Queen Cinema. Please welcome on stage your hosts for the evening, Miss Gibraltar 1996, Samantha Lane and Eric Rowbottom.
Good evening. And for the benefit of our friends from Morocco, Masa Al-Hayr. The Oxford Dictionary defines disability as, and I quote, a lack of some asset, quality or attribute that prevents a person from doing something. In this sense, we all suffer or indeed enjoy some form of disability. But what is important is to what extent we use our other assets, qualities or attributes to compensate for this perceived absence.
Disabled people were hidden from society. It's a horrible thing to say, but families hid their own family members from society. And that was a big stigma to overcome. It brings everybody down, you know what I mean? Because if you hide people behind the curtain, and then you walk into a room and you're exactly the same as the person who's hiding behind the curtain, two things happen. One, you don't know that the person is there. And two, when you find out that the person is there, the impact it has on you is terrible. It's absolutely terrible, because you think, why are they hiding? Should I be hiding? Because I'm the same. Should I be hiding? Am I doing the right thing if I'm not hiding? And it's a big thing to overcome. Luckily today that is not the case. That is not the case. There are many disabled people around. I mean, the Paralympics that's just happened now, have finished now. The slogan was "We the 15," and it's 15% of world population is believed to be disabled in one form or another. 15%. In Gibraltar, it's about 5,000 people, 4,500 people. Where are they? Some disabilities are visible, like myself. You can see me coming from a mile away, but other disabilities are not visible. And sometimes when you have a disability that's not visible, the person might not want that side of the character or the person to be known, but it's 15% of the world population. That's a heck of a big number. And yet we're still talking about steps, lack of access, education, jobs, housing, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I'm talking to friends that live in the UK, live in Spain, and we talk about, and obviously it always comes down to, how are you doing? How is it in your place? How is it in my place? How is it here? How is it there? And we all have something in common. We all have issues in common. And I remember a few weeks ago, a friend of mine was over here from the UK, and we were talking about these things because he was here about 20 odd years ago, and he's seen the changes. And we're talking about his side of it, where he is living. And I was saying, you know, it's really tiring to be a disabled person. It's exhausting to be a disabled person in Gibraltar.